Hello and welcome to Prosperity by the Pint. It's a podcast where we talk about money, investing, business, and life success, all while having a cold beer. This is the very first episode from our brand new table, a brand new set here, episode 43. Been working on it for a while. Just wanted to find what I was looking for, which is a high top wooden table that looks and feels like we're having a great time, and we are. All right. Cheers. So the drink of the week is Mosaic IPA from Community Beer Company. It's an IPA. It's a double dry hopped IPA. And I'm expecting something nice and hoppy. Also strong, apparently. 8.6% alcohol. Uh-oh. Too much pour. That one was mostly foam, so I'll have to give a review in a minute. So I wanted to talk a minute this episode about some swag. So Prosperity by the Pint finally has some swag out. We have some hats, very similar to the one that I am wearing right now, except for blue. It's a leather patch hat, really nice trucker cap. So we are selling those for $20 a piece. I'm not making much money on these things at all. I'm pretty much selling them just a little bit above cost, just a little bit, like any good business person would do. Send us a message on Facebook Messenger or email at alley@fsgmichigan.com, and you can get your very own Prosperity by the Pint hat. So that's my sales pitch for the episode. Let's get right into it. This episode, we are going to be talking about the generational wealth gap. Okay? So now I'm going to give that beer review. Oh, man. That is lovely. I've been on a roll with really good beers lately. I've kind of stopped drinking the weird stuff people send me, like strawberry shortcake barrel-aged vitamin D beer. Like, I don't like that stuff. We're just going to stick with ales and IPAs from now on, maybe occasional cider, and go from there. So, we're generational wealth gap. It's no secret that as you get older, you tend to accumulate more assets, right? So early on, if you go through your life cycle, when you're a baby, you're very, very broke, right? Then you get your first job cutting grass and you're making $25 a week or something like that. And then you maybe just delivering newspapers and then so on and so forth. And your income level typically goes up and up and up as you move through life's progressions, right? And also your obligations peaking sometime in your 40s or 50s with kids in college and things like that. Start to go down in your mid to late 50s. Kids are through college, and you're closer to having most of your debts and obligations paid off. So you're able to you're making more, right? You're making more than you were in your first job out of college, but you're also able to spend less on liabilities, and therefore you're able to save more. Not only that, but as you started to save early on, it might not have been much, but when you started saving in your 20s and your 30s and so on, that money has had time to accumulate and build. And so the interest has earned interest. That's compound interest. I think I did an entire episode on that one time. Don't remember what episode that is, but that's why you should listen to all of them. So compound interest, simple product of if I have $100 saved and it makes 10%, next year I have $110 left over, or now built up, to make 10%. So instead of making $10, I'm going to make $11, and that so on and so forth. Where the simple math on that is if you can make 10% on your money a year, you will double your money every 7.2 years. That's called the rule of 72. It's a fun rule. Anyways, so we know that you're going to accumulate more wealth as time goes on. But what's really interesting and what I want to talk about is this chart that a economist PhD named Gray Kimball. I always want to call him Gary because you see those letters together, Gary. Shout out to my favorite fan, Gary Fraze. Gray Kimball recently used Federal Reserve data to come up with a comparison as to what percentage of the nation's wealth different generations have had when they reached age 35. So the baby boomers, when they were an average of 35 years old, which is 1990, they held 20% of the nation's wealth. Not an inconsiderable amount by any means for people that still had, realistically 25 to 30 years of working left. At the median age of 35, Generation X, which they are the ones that were born post 1964 to the 1980s, depending on who you ask, mid 1980s, which is when the baby boomers were starting to be born. Yours truly is in that baby boomer collection, self-proclaimed millennial money expert, right? I'm not in the baby boomer collection. I'm a product of baby boomers. Anyways, so Generation X, when they were 35, they had, and this was 2008, about 9%. They had 9%, just 9, not a 90, just 9% of the nation's wealth. Okay. Now, we actually have a few years. We have until 2023 before the average baby boomer, the median baby boomer, is 35 years old. But we can use projections and look at it. I'll just tell you what the number looks like today, 8 years away from that time. And we're a little behind the curve. So right now, baby boomers hold on about 3% of the nation's wealth, which is basically we got to triple our money between now and 2023. Not only that, we don't have to just triple our money. We have to gain ground. We have to triple the ground that we have to gain on baby boomers and Generation X. So some of you might listen to this and say, but the population has grown and populations of different generations are different sizes. That's fine. The statistics work out the same. It's a percentage of per capita wealth is down to. Basically, millennials are broke. Baby boomers got it made. That's the premise of the chart. I don't think it's entirely transparent, though. We're going to talk about some things that maybe throw these statistics off and don't necessarily reflect what's going to happen or what is currently happening. So there's a lot of reasons we're behind the curve, and I talked a lot about this in episode 1. This is something I'm passionate about. I really hate when people categorically say millennials are lazy or we don't want to work hard and we're not motivated, whatever it may be. It's all this nomenclature around stereotypes that we're just putting on man bums and going to coffee shops and working on our screenplay, right? That's not millennials, right? I've had some badass millennials on here, Zach Phillips, Josh Ingersoll, Ed Constable, that are all out there working their asses off and becoming better and better and growing and pushing their businesses to the next level, and they are working hard. And there's a lot more out there that haven't been on this episode that or this show that work hard and have a great work ethic and are creative thinkers. But as a generation, there's some things that have happened that I think have led to this generational wealth gap. One, the baby boomers essentially came of age and came up in a time of extreme prosperity in the United States. You're talking about a post-World War II economy that we're essentially the only industrialized nation left in the world. So there was it was a great time. Companies offered fantastic benefits with pensions and a golden watch, and so it was relatively easy for baby boomers that were fiscally responsible to accumulate large amounts of wealth in the right opportunities. I think those opportunities are there today for millennials, but we have different types of opportunities. We have to handle them a little bit more on ourselves and less reliant on the corporations in which we might be employed by. So if you take a scenario where you can start fresh out of college at $20 an hour in 1985 money, that's a lot different than the typical millennial today, which goes to college. We're much more educated than our parents. We have a greater percentage of us have bachelor's degrees and advanced degrees beyond that. But that has saddled us with student loan debt. That's a big part of this. Lower overall wages as a percentage of inflation. So if wages were inflation adjusted, we'd be broke compared to where they are right now. And by comparison, what I mean is if we just made the same amount as our parents did at our age, but it was inflation adjusted, we would be reeling in the money. But we're not. I say we as a generation, not we as a me personally. I think life expectancy plays a role in this too. So a lot of wealth is transferred through inheritance, right? So your parents might have inherited something, your grandparents might have inherited something, but that's taking longer to unfold because life expectancies are going up. So in 1990, when boomers reached the age of 35, the life expectancy was 72. So there was a pretty good chance that their parents weren't there anymore, which means they might have inherited their parents' home and retirement accounts or whatever it may be. And that, I'm not saying that's why if you're a baby boomer, don't be offended by this. This is just facts. This isn't, me degrading anybody by any means. Today, the average life expectancy is 79. And, if you're 35 years old, your parents might still be in their mid to late 50s, right? So I think that plays a role. Our parents took longer to have kids than their parents did, right? So I think my great-grandmother got married at 16, right? My parents had their first kid at 22. My wife and I had our first child when we were 28 and 30, respectively. So parents are older now, so it is what it is. The average baby boomer today is 64, and they hold about 60% of the nation's wealth. So if you look over the next 15, 20 years, I don't want to be pessimistic to those in that generation, but there will be parts of the baby boomer generation that start to die, and what's essentially going to happen is a generational wealth shift. And so this is crazy. This is a crazy statistic, but Sorelli Associates, it's a large research firm, and they say over the next 25 years that there will be a shift of 45. I'm going to get the households. I want to get these numbers right, so I'm going to start again. Over the next 25 years, 45 million households will pass a mind-boggling $68 trillion to their children. Okay, so one more time. Over the next 25 years, 48 million households will pass along to their children $68 trillion with a T to their children. And so almost all of that is held in baby boomer and just older baby boomer generation. And that's going to go to mostly younger Gen X and millennial generations. And so that transfer of wealth, that is huge. That is, history has never seen anything even close to that, even on percentage terms. Now, here's an interesting thing, is most of the wealth that's going to be transferred is in two assets. Houses, real estate, makes sense, right? Mom and dad got that house, and they got a cabin up north. That makes sense. The other thing is inherited IRAs. The money's held in IRAs right now. So you may be inheriting an IRA from grandma, grandpa, mom, dad some point in the next 25 years. We got time, right? We're not being pessimistic or morbid today. I haven't drank any of this beer, and that's a shame because it's fantastic. That is really good. Good job. They should be proud of themselves. Community Beer Company. I don't know where they're from, though. Dallas, Texas. I think this one came from a friend of mine, Travis Brewer. He's a fan of the podcast. He's given me a lot of pieces of positive and constructive criticism on the podcast. So, Travis, thank you for sending that to me. So what we're looking at is with this shift of wealth, there's a lot of IRAs being involved. An IRA is an individual retirement account. We've talked about this a lot on this podcast. IRAs, Roth IRAs, etc. Now, here's the thing about IRAs is you have to be very careful. I've thought about in the past spending an entire episode on the topic of inherited IRAs, but it just didn't sound that fun. But I'm going to give you the main information that you need to know right now. Is if you inherit an IRA from mom and dad, an individual retirement account, it comes with some rules and regulations that you have to follow. And if you don't follow them, you could actually run into quite a bit of trouble with the IRS. So rule number one is that every year you have to take a distribution from the account. And you don't get to pick the distribution amount, at least not the minimum amount, right? So if you have an IRA that is $100,000, the IRS is going to do a calculation and say you inherited this IRA. You have to, because you're 40 years old this year, you're going to have to take out $3,800. And then the following year, they might make you take out $4,500 and so on and so forth. Because that money has never been taxed, because it's individual retirement account money that has grown tax deferred and was put in as a tax deduction, it's never been taxed. The IRS wants their money. So they're going to make you start to pull it out and spend it. They don't care what you spend it on. They don't care if you take that money out and then reinvest it in something else. They don't care if you take it out and pay for college. They don't care. They just make you withdraw the money, pay the taxes on it, and do something. The penalty for not doing this is 50%. So if you're required to take out $10,000 and you only take out $2,000, there's $8,000 that you should have taken out. Your penalty, $4,000. That's hefty, right? So there's some things in Congress right now to change the rule to make you actually spend it down in 5 years, that you have to pull it all out in 5 years. That's not live yet. I think it could go through. I think it's a realistic chance of going through, but that's trying to predict government. You know what Congress likes to do? Kick the can down the road. But so this is just things to be really conscious of if you're inheriting an IRA. Now, I don't want to be too negative, right? So I'm talking about this generational wealth gap. You guys all know I believe in our generation, the millennial generation. I think that we can do some fantastic things. I think that we have great opportunities, right? Life expectancy is better for us than it has been for any previous generation. Overall poverty is down, and so overall quality of life is up. We're better educated. We're destroying the divorce industry. Divorce rates have plummeted. Now, part of that's because we're waiting longer to get married, but hey, facts are facts, right? So we're destroying the divorce industry. We have more information at our fingertips than any generation has ever even come close to thinking of, right? I mean, if you want to know how much you can contribute to a Roth IRA, guess what? You probably don't need to ask me. You can ask me. It's $6,000, but if you're under the age of 50, but you can find that out yourself. It's easier now to invest and save and figure out how to open those accounts than it ever has been. So we have an easier time investing and saving than previous generations. It's easier to have a side hustle, a side gig. It's unfortunate that you need one, but man, embrace the opportunity. Side hustles are a great way to become more financially independent and not be saddled with the burden of a 9-to-5 job. We have more opportunities to do that than anybody ever has. I mean, Gary Vee talks about this. I love Gary Vee. His grandparents were getting up in the middle of the night to go chop wood so they could put it in the wood stove. And you can lay in bed and post on Instagram and potentially make money. So, let's not cry over spilled milk here. We got opportunities. Our generation is set up for success over the long period with our education, with the opportunities that are out, available to us and the information that's out there. So let's just be positive. Let's have a beer. Let's relax a little bit. Hey, episode of Prosperity by the Pint, number 43. Don't forget to follow us, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, wherever you are. Don't forget to get your Prosperity by the Pint hats. Cheers.